Over 40,000 people. I mean, think about that number for a second. That is not just a conference. That is literally the population of a small city. You've got government delegates, civil society reps, business leaders, and journalists all descending upon the annual UN climate change conferences. We see the big headlines, right? The impassioned speeches, the dramatic down-to-the-wire negotiations on the world stage. But have you ever actually stopped to wonder who runs this massive, high-stakes operation behind the scenes? Who is the person responsible for making sure the entire infrastructure of global climate diplomacy doesn't just collapse under its own weight?
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping right past the politicians and walking straight into the true engine room of global climate action. We're going to look at one of the most consequential, yet honestly least understood roles in international governance, the Deputy Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC. Based in Bonn, Germany, at the Assistant Secretary General level, this person is essentially the ultimate chief operating officer for our planet's climate response. We are going to break down exactly what it takes to manage the sheer machinery that keeps these international climate agreements alive. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the climate engine room, from rules to reality, the ultimate operational challenge, digitizing global climate data, the human element, and we'll wrap up with impact beyond the summit.
All right. Let's dive into Part 1, the Climate Engine Room, Navigating Global Governance. So the UNFCCC Secretariat isn't just managing some single isolated project. Far from it. They are the operational backbone for the foundational 1992 Convention, the Kyoto Protocol, and of course, the monumental Paris Agreement. The Deputy Executive Secretary is personally responsible for making sure the technical, administrative, and diplomatic machinery of these massive global treaties functions absolutely flawlessly. They are literally sitting at the operational center of humanity's collective response to the climate emergency.
Moving right along to Part 2, from rules to reality, the big pivot.
Now, notice this huge contrast. Following the adoption of the Paris Agreement back in 2015, the Secretariat was entirely consumed with building the rulebook. They were facilitating incredibly complex technical negotiations just to figure out the exact guidelines, the reporting frameworks, and the institutional setups. But that era? It's over. The mandate has fundamentally shifted. Today, the new era is entirely about driving real-world implementation. The core job of this Climate COO is to pivot the entire internal operating model away from just writing rules and toward actually helping nations deliver genuine emissions reductions, build resilience, and drive sustainable development on the ground.
Which brings us to Part 3, the ultimate operational challenge, delivering COP. Executing this summit is, frankly, a logistical nightmare. You are uniting nearly 200 governments for the annual Conference of the Parties, or COP. Doing this requires flawlessly managing highly sensitive, constantly evolving legal documentation across 6 official UN languages simultaneously. It means coordinating massive, and I mean massive, interpretation services and incredibly tight security protocols in partnership with the host country. And they have to do all this while providing the substantive technical support that negotiators need to actually make progress. It has to be perfect, and it's all playing out live under the intense, microscopic scrutiny of global media.
But here is what a lot of people totally miss. The work absolutely does not stop when the COP summit packs up and ends. The administrative machinery is humming year-round out of their headquarters in Bonn, Germany. Between those big, high-profile annual gatherings, the Deputy Executive Secretary is managing dozens of subsidiary body sessions, technical dialogues, and constituted body meetings. It is just this continuous, relentless cycle of multilateral diplomacy, and it demands flawless operational support every single day of the year.
Okay, shifting gears a bit to Part 4, digitizing global climate data, the tech backbone.
You've probably heard of Article 6. It's a critical component of the Paris Agreement, establishing the framework for international carbon market governance. It basically allows countries to voluntarily cooperate to meet their emission reduction targets. But to actually make this a reality, the world needs incredibly complex, highly secure carbon market registries. And it falls right onto the desk of our Climate COO to strategically oversee these technological systems, ensuring they actually work and maintain the absolute highest standards of data integrity. The Secretariat acts as the digital backbone for the entire planet. They process a mind-boggling volume of data. They're tracking nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, and managing biennial transparency reports. Think of it as a giant global accountability ledger for greenhouse gas inventories. To handle this growing mountain of technical data efficiently, the Deputy Executive Secretary has to lead a massive digital transformation. This even includes the thoughtful integration of artificial intelligence to boost analytical capabilities. But they have to do it without ever compromising the security and trust that all 200 nations place in this global transparency system.
Next up, Part 5, the human element, culture under pressure. It's easy to forget, but behind all these complex treaties and massive data systems are actual human beings carrying the weight of the world's climate expectations on their shoulders. The Deputy Executive Secretary holds a huge responsibility for organizational culture. They have to actively manage intense workload compression, especially around the COP summit, just to protect staff well-being. Plus, acting as the Chief Ethics Officer, they enforce whistleblower protections and ensure psychological safety. They're also mandated to advance disability inclusion, promote gender responsiveness, and strictly enforce the prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse. Honestly, building a high-performing, genuinely inclusive workforce under this much global pressure requires some phenomenal people leadership.
Finally, let's look at Part 6, Impact Beyond the Summit, Funding the Fight.
This whole operation begs a critical, very real question. How do you actually fund the climate fight when nearly 200 nations fundamentally disagree on resource allocation? The Deputy Executive Secretary must walk a razor-thin diplomatic tightrope here. They have to secure the necessary financial resources from member nations that have vastly different economic capacities, entirely different political realities, and heavily conflicting perspectives on how much the Secretariat should even be funded, let alone what its priorities should be. So the budget actually relies on a really delicate hybrid model. The Secretariat receives core assessed contributions, which are basically mandatory dues from member nations, but they lean heavily on voluntary programmatic funding to actually get specific projects across the finish line. The Deputy Executive Secretary has to delicately negotiate this biennial budget, rigorously monitor its implementation, and continuously prove value for money to the parties. If they fail at this financial stewardship, the operational capabilities of the entire climate governance process are put in serious jeopardy.
And we can't forget the host country diplomacy. Operating a major UN entity out of Bonn requires seamless, behind-the-scenes coordination with German federal authorities and the local city government. From securing the physical premises to managing complex diplomatic privileges and immunities, the Deputy Executive Secretary is acting as a major diplomatic player just to ensure the physical and legal infrastructure is there so the Secretariat can do its job.
The strategic mandate of this whole sprawling operation really boils down to one simple phrase: optimize for delivery and impact. Saving the planet isn't just about politicians smiling and signing treaties. It is a colossal, grueling operational challenge to translate those paper commitments into actual emissions reductions, real resilience on the ground, and flowing finance. So, I want to leave you with this thought. As we look toward our climate future, is it possible that our global survival will depend just as much on the quiet, hidden operational excellence, the logistics, and the data management of this Secretariat as it does on the loud, public, political willpower of our world leaders? Understanding this incredible, hidden machinery of the UNFCCC gives us a whole new perspective on what it actually takes to fight global climate change. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning what happens behind the scenes.